Keep your hands where I can see them, thug. This county's got enough trouble without your kind passing through it. Officer Grant Barlow shoved Elijah Reed hard against the side of his SUV, gripping his shoulder like the outcome was already decided, while Dana Mercer stepped closer with that calm, practiced confidence that came from doing this too many times before. Funny how every robbery suspect suddenly acts polite when we finally catch up to them, Mercer said, loud enough for the growing crowd to hear. A few phones quietly lifted as the scene unfolded. Elijah stood there in faded jeans and a plain white t-shirt, looking exactly like the kind of traveler they believed they could humiliate without consequences. Barlow leaned in, certain he was in control, until Elijah calmly pulled out an FBI badge, and both officers went dead silent. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The late afternoon sun beat down on the rural gas station, casting long shadows across the cracked concrete. Elijah Reed's shoulders ached from hours behind the wheel. He'd chosen this quiet spot deliberately, just a brief stop before meeting his confidential source about the extremism case. The isolation suited his need to stay under the radar. Through the diner's streaked window, he noticed Lena Morales watching the forecourt with sharp attention. Her eyes tracked every customer, every vehicle, like someone who'd learned the hard way to stay alert. She had the weary stance of someone who'd seen too much go wrong in what should be a peaceful place. Elijah kept his movements calm and ordinary as he worked the gas pump. The routine clicks and whirs of the machine filled the heavy air. A few other customers drifted in and out, barely sparing him a glance. A local radio station crackled through outdoor speakers, playing old country songs between weather updates and farm reports. The peace shattered when two police cruisers swung into the lot fast enough to kick up gravel. The sudden screech of tires made several customers jump. Elijah's hand tightened on the pump handle, his tactical training kicking in as he assessed the officer's aggressive approach. This wasn't a casual patrol stop. Officer Dana Mercer emerged from the first vehicle, her hand already resting near her weapon. Officer Grant Barlow flanked her, his broad shoulders squared for confrontation. They moved with practiced coordination that felt rehearsed rather than natural. "Step away from the vehicle," Mercer called out, her voice carrying across the lot with artificial authority. "Hands where we can see them. Is there a problem, officers?" Elijah kept his tone neutral, though his mind was already cataloging the irregularities in their approach. "You match the description of an armed robbery suspect," Barlow announced, closing the distance quickly. "Turn around, hands on your head." "What description would that be?" Elijah asked carefully. The question hung in the air, unanswered. More customers had frozen in place, watching the scene unfold. Near the garage bay, a young mechanic, Noah Pike according to his name patch, pulled out his phone and began recording with trembling hands. His face showed the internal struggle of someone who knew he might pay a price for documenting this moment. Mercer positioned herself to block the clearest view from the diner, her movements too precise to be coincidental. "Sir, comply immediately or we will use force." Inside the diner, Lena Morales had gone completely still, her experienced eyes noting how the officers seemed to know exactly where to stand, how to control sight lines. This wasn't the confused urgency of officers spotting a possible suspect. This was choreographed, expected. "I'm reaching for my ID," Elijah said clearly, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. But before his hand could move, Barlow closed the distance. "Against the vehicle now!" The officer's command carried an edge of anticipated satisfaction rather than professional concern. The few customers still pumping gas backed away, faces showing a mix of discomfort and resignation. They'd seen this before, Elijah realized. This station had witnessed similar scenes play out, leaving silence in their wake. The heat pressed down as Barlow's hands roughly patted him down, the search more about dominance than procedure. Elijah could feel the officer's breath on his neck, hot with anticipated victory. Every movement was designed to humiliate rather than investigate. "Officer, I'd like to know what specific description I'm supposed to match." Elijah tried again, maintaining his professional calm despite the growing tension. The question seemed to irritate Barlow, whose grip tightened noticeably. "Shut your mouth," Barlow growled, loud enough for the growing crowd to hear. "You'll speak when we tell you to speak." Noah's phone captured every second, though his hands shook slightly. He'd angled himself to catch the clearest view while trying to remain unobtrusive. His jaw was clenched, eyes wide with the knowledge that he was witnessing something wrong. Lena had moved to the diner doorway, her face a mask of controlled anger. She'd seen too many incidents like this, watched too many people swallow their pride and dignity just to survive the encounter. But something about this stop felt different, more deliberate, more personal. The air grew thicker with tension as Barlow continued his aggressive pat-down. Every customer who tried to leave found their path subtly blocked by Mercer's positioning. She wanted witnesses, Elijah realized. Witnesses to whatever was about to happen. "Face down on the hood," Barlow ordered, his voice carrying a hint of anticipation that made nearby witnesses shift uncomfortably. When Elijah didn't move fast enough to satisfy him, Barlow grabbed his shoulder. In one violent motion, he slammed Elijah forward against the hot metal of the SUV. The impact knocked the breath from Elijah's lungs and sent a spike of pain through his chest. The crowd gasped. Noah's phone wavered, but kept recording. Lena's hands gripped the doorframe so hard her knuckles went white. And in that moment, as the public display of force reached its ugly peak, the entire gas station seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The metal of the SUV burned against Elijah's cheek as Barlow pressed him harder against the hood. Mercer twisted his arm behind his back, her grip betraying years of practice at causing just enough pain to stay within policy. The pressure increased steadily, making his shoulder joints strain. "On the ground if you keep resisting," Barlow threatened, his breath hot against Elijah's ear. "Your choice how this goes." Elijah forced his muscles to stay loose, despite every instinct screaming at him to defend himself. Years of training and experience had taught him that reaction now would only feed their narrative. He kept his voice steady and clear, projecting for the witnesses he knew were watching. "Officers, this is an unlawful detention without probable cause or reasonable suspicion," he said, measuring each word carefully. "You have provided no legitimate description of any suspect I supposedly match." Barlow's laugh carried across the suddenly quiet lot. "Listen to this one, Dana. Thinks he's a lawyer. Sir, continuing to resist will result in additional charges," Mercer responded in that practiced, emotionless tone that made abuse sound like procedure. "We are conducting a lawful investigative stop based on reasonable suspicion of criminal activity." Near the garage, Noah's phone remained steady, capturing every word and movement. His young face showed conflict, the fear of getting involved wrestling with the knowledge that someone needed to document what was happening. A middle-aged man in work clothes took a step forward, clearly wanting to intervene. Lena caught his eye from the diner doorway and gave a slight shake of her head. Not yet. The tension needed to play out without escalation that could get someone hurt. "I am going to reach for my identification," Elijah announced clearly, keeping his movement minimal. "My wallet is in my back right pocket. I am telling you now that I am a federal—" "Shut up!" Barlow cut him off, increasing the pressure. "You don't give orders here." "I'll get your ID myself." The officer's hand roughly yanked Elijah's wallet free, the leather scraping against his hip. Barlow flipped it open with theatrical flair, clearly expecting to find more ammunition for his power play. But Elijah had managed to twist just enough to ensure the badge would be visible first. The gold shield caught the late afternoon sun, the FBI credentials unmistakable. The effect was instant and electric. Mercer's grip on his arm loosened suddenly, her procedural recitation cutting off mid-sentence. Barlow took 2 quick steps backward, as if the badge might burn him, nearly dropping the wallet. A wave of whispers rippled through the gathered crowd. Phones raised higher, everyone wanting to capture the moment the tables turned. Noah's eyes went wide, but his camera never wavered. Elijah straightened slowly, his shoulders aching as he turned to face the officers. His voice carried across the lot, pitched to ensure every witness could hear clearly. "Special Agent Elijah Reed, Federal Bureau of Investigation," he stated, letting each word land with precise weight. "Badge number 7249, currently assigned to the Domestic Terrorism Task Force." He met each officer's eyes in turn. "And you have multiple witnesses recording this unlawful detention." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the radio seemed to have gone quiet, as if the station itself was holding its breath. Barlow's face had gone pale beneath his summer tan. Mercer's professional mask had cracked, showing the first hints of genuine emotion. Fear. "This—" Mercer finally spoke, her voice having lost its artificial authority. "This was clearly a misunderstanding, Agent." She trailed off, and that's when Elijah caught it. The slight hesitation before she stopped herself from saying his name. A name she shouldn't have known yet, since Barlow still held his wallet and credentials. His mind catalogued this detail even as he maintained his steady gaze. The heat pressed down on all of them, but the power dynamics had shifted like desert sand. The gathered witnesses remained frozen, sensing that they were watching something significant unfold. Noah's phone captured every second of the officer's silent panic. Lena had moved closer, her experienced eyes missing nothing. She saw how Mercer's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her radio, how Barlow seemed unable to decide what to do with the wallet he still held, as if it had become radioactive. The crowd's murmuring grew louder, phones still recording as people processed what they'd witnessed. Some were already typing rapidly, sharing what they'd seen. The story was escaping into the wider world with every passing second. Elijah stood perfectly still, letting the moment stretch. He'd been humiliated in public view, and now he would let these officers experience their own public reckoning. Every witness could see the fear replacing their previous arrogance. Their silence spoke volumes. Not the confusion of officers making an honest mistake, but the devastating realization that they had badly miscalculated. The gas station had become a stage, and the performance of power had just undergone a dramatic reversal. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cracked concrete, but nothing could hide the officers' discomfort as they faced the consequences of their actions under the unblinking eyes of dozens of phones. The crowd shifted uneasily in the afternoon heat, phones still raised like shields. No one moved to leave. They sensed the confrontation wasn't truly over, even with badges revealed and power dynamics reversed. The air felt charged, electric with unfinished business. Elijah straightened his jacket with deliberate calm, though his shoulder still ached where Mercer had twisted it. He stepped away from his SUV, squaring his stance as he faced both officers. "Names and badge numbers," he commanded. His voice carried across the parking lot. "Now!" Barlow's jaw clenched. Mercer maintained her professional mask, but her eyes darted between Elijah and the crowd of witnesses. "Officer Dana Mercer, badge 2274, she replied mechanically. "Officer Grant Barlow, badge 1849, Barlow muttered, still holding Elijah's wallet awkwardly. "Return my credentials, Officer Barlow." Elijah held out his hand. When Barlow hesitated, Elijah's voice hardened. "Now!" The wallet slapped into his palm. Elijah tucked it away without breaking eye contact. "Explain the legal basis for this stop," he demanded. What specific description did I match? What robbery are you investigating? I want times, locations, and incident numbers. Mercer cleared her throat. We received reports of a suspicious vehicle matching. What make and model? She faltered. A dark-colored SUV. There are 3 other dark SUVs at these pumps right now. Elijah cut in. Why specifically target my vehicle, Officer Mercer? Agent Reed, if you'll allow me to explain. She stopped abruptly, realizing her mistake. Interesting, Elijah said softly. You know my name. But Officer Barlow only just checked my ID, didn't he? The silence stretched. Noah's phone captured every second of their discomfort. Barlow's hand twitched toward his radio, then dropped away. I suggest you both return to your vehicles, Elijah said. Expect contact from the Bureau regarding this incident. As the officers retreated, Elijah pulled out his phone. He dialed the confidential source he'd driven hours to meet. A former militia member willing to discuss domestic extremist networks in the region. The phone rang repeatedly before going to voicemail. He tried again. Nothing. Lena Morales approached quietly, her eyes following the officers as they climbed into their cruisers. She'd watched the entire scene unfold from her diner doorway. They knew you were coming, she said in a low voice. This wasn't random. We see a lot of stops here. Black families, Latino workers, out-of-state plates with the wrong bumper stickers, but nobody with your kind of authority. Elijah studied her face. How long has this been happening? Years. Getting worse lately. She glanced at the retreating police vehicles. Most folks don't file complaints. Those who do, nothing comes of it. Papers get lost. Witnesses change their minds. Noah stepped forward, phone still in hand. I got everything, sir. The whole stop, from when they first pulled in. I can send you the video. I'd appreciate that. Elijah noted the young man's nervous energy, the way he kept checking over his shoulder despite his determination to help. The cruisers pulled away, kicking up dust as they merged back onto the highway. The crowd began to disperse, though many lingered, typing on phones or talking in hushed clusters. The story was already spreading. Elijah's phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message was brief. You should have kept driving. He stared at the words, feeling the pieces shift into new alignment. The aggressive stop. The missing source. The officers knowing his name. This wasn't just harassment or profiling. This was coordinated. Someone had leaked his route. Someone wanted him intercepted here, at this isolated station. But why? To frighten him off? To delay his meeting? Or had things been meant to escalate further before he revealed his badge? Sir? Noah was still waiting with his phone. Where should I send the video? Before Elijah could answer, Lena touched his arm. Inside first, she said firmly. My office. More private than standing out here. She was right. Too many eyes, too many phones, too many unknowns. Elijah nodded to Noah. Come with us. I'll need your statement, too. The diner's air conditioning hit him as they entered, a sharp contrast to the baking parking lot. But Elijah's mind was already racing ahead, analyzing angles. The stop itself was just the surface. Beneath it lay something deeper. A system comfortable enough with intimidation to target a federal agent, confident enough to send warning messages afterward. He couldn't treat this as a simple misunderstanding or even an isolated abuse of power. The text message confirmed that. This was strategy, not impulse. Someone had decided he needed to be stopped, checked, maybe silenced. The question was who, and what they were so determined to hide. Lena led them through the diner's evening crowd to her small office in back. Noah kept glancing at his phone screen, replaying fragments of the footage. Outside, the sun continued its slow descent, but the heat lingered, heavy and oppressive, like the weight of unspoken threats hanging in the air. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, as Elijah sat in a corner booth of Lena's diner. his laptop open and a half-empty coffee cup at his elbow. The evening crowd had thinned to a few truckers and locals, leaving him relative privacy to work. His shoulders still ached from Barlow's rough handling, a physical reminder of what had transpired less than an hour ago. Noah's hands trembled slightly as he transferred the video file to Elijah's computer. "I got everything from when they first pulled in," he said. "The way they came at you, it wasn't right." Elijah nodded, watching the footage transfer. "You kept filming when others backed away. That matters." The video loaded, crystal clear despite the late afternoon sun. Elijah created multiple copies, storing them in separate, secure locations before forwarding the original to 3 trusted contacts at the Bureau. He hit play, studying the scene with professional detachment. The cruiser's aggressive arrival, Mercer's calculated positioning, Barlow's immediate escalation. But there, just before the first word was spoken, Mercer's subtle hand signal to Barlow. A practiced gesture between partners who'd done this before. "They were coordinated," Elijah muttered, replaying that moment. This wasn't impulse. His phone buzzed with notifications. Another angle of the stop had appeared online, shorter but equally damning. Comments and shares were multiplying by the minute. The first news sites were picking it up. FBI agent racially profiled at rural gas station. Federal officer detained without cause. Full video. The public outrage was building faster than he'd expected. Lena appeared with fresh coffee. Her movements efficient, but her expression troubled. She glanced at the laptop screen showing the frozen image of Mercer and Barlow approaching Elijah's vehicle. "Those two are always trouble," she said quietly, refilling his cup. "But they're just the visible part. This stretch of highway—" She hesitated. "Tell me," Elijah prompted. "Past few years, we've seen too many stops. Wrong color, wrong accent, wrong bumper sticker. Doesn't take much. Most folks just want to get through it alive. Keep driving." She set the coffee pot down. "Deputies know which sections have poor cell coverage. They know which cameras work and which don't." "Systematic," Elijah said. It wasn't a question. "Getting worse lately. More organized." Lena's voice dropped further. "Like they've got protection somewhere. People complain, nothing happens. Evidence disappears. Witnesses go quiet." Elijah tried his confidential source again, listening to the unanswered rings. The informant had specifically chosen this location, insisting on meeting here. Now Elijah wondered if that choice had been forced, if someone had used the source to set up this confrontation. His phone vibrated. Unknown number, again. "Go home, agent." The message carried weight beyond its words. Someone was watching, monitoring, confident enough to keep pushing even after the stop had failed. This wasn't just local deputies overstepping. This was infrastructure. Noah shifted nervously in his seat, checking his own phone. "It's everywhere now," he said. "The video, I mean. Thousands of shares already." "Are you comfortable with that?" Elijah asked, studying the young mechanic's face. Yes. Noah straightened slightly. "People need to see what really happens out here." "I need you to stay reachable tonight," Elijah said. "You're a primary witness. If anyone approaches you about the video, call me immediately." He wrote down his direct number. Noah took it, but his fingers weren't quite steady. The reality of his role was clearly sinking in. What if they come to my house?" "They won't," Elijah said firmly. "That would only make this bigger. But stay alert and call me for anything suspicious." After Noah left, Elijah walked across the highway to the Paradise Inn, a faded, single-story motel that had seen better decades. The clerk barely looked up from her phone as she handed over a room key. The space smelled of old cigarettes and cheaper cleaning products, but it had a clear view of both the gas station and the main road. He set up his laptop again, reviewing case files and local complaint records while monitoring the video's spread. The footage had reached national news networks now. Social media was exploding with outrage. His federal contacts were demanding updates. At 8:45 p.m., Elijah tried calling Noah for a scheduled check-in. The phone rang through to voicemail. He tried again at 8:50. Nothing. At 8:55, he sent a text. "Please confirm you're safe." No response. By 9:00 p.m., the silence had shifted from concerning to ominous. The anger that had driven Elijah since the stop transformed into something colder, heavier. He'd seen too many cases, too many patterns. He knew what happened to isolated witnesses when systems of power felt threatened. He dialed Noah's number one more time, listening to the empty rings echo. Each unanswered second confirmed his growing dread. The young mechanic who'd done the right thing, who'd stood up when others looked away, who'd believed in justice enough to help expose its absence, had vanished into the dark spaces between streetlights, where badges and power operated unchecked. The diner's lights glowed across the highway, but the night beyond them seemed deeper now, filled with shadows that had nothing to do with the setting sun. The motel parking lot was empty except for Elijah's SUV when he stepped out into the humid night air. His footsteps echoed across the cracked pavement as streetlights cast long shadows. The gas station's fluorescent glow provided the only real illumination, making the surrounding darkness feel deeper and more threatening. Elijah crossed the highway, his hand instinctively near his weapon. The mechanical bay where Noah worked was set behind the main station building, partially hidden from street view. As he approached, he noticed the large garage door was stuck halfway down, as if someone had left in a hurry. Toolboxes lay scattered near a half-finished brake job. A socket wrench set sprawled across the concrete floor, its case open and contents spilling out. Noah's work shirt hung from a hook, still damp with the day's sweat. The scene felt wrong, frozen in mid-task rather than properly closed for the night. "He always cleans up before leaving," Lena said, making Elijah turn sharply. She stood in the doorway connecting the garage to the main building, arms crossed tightly. "Been working here 3 years. Never leaves tools out like this." "When exactly did he leave?" Elijah asked, studying the garage's security cameras. "Around 8. Said he was heading straight home to his mama's place." Lena's fingers worried at her sleeve. He seemed nervous, kept checking his phone. "But he said he was fine when I asked." Elijah found Noah's business card pinned to a corkboard, showing an address on Maple Creek Road. "His truck's not here?" "No, old blue Ford F-150. Should have made it home in 15 minutes, tops." Lena stepped further into the garage. "Those cameras won't help. They've been malfunctioning since last month, when the sheriff's department did their annual inspection." Of course they had. Elijah committed the address to memory and headed back to his vehicle. The drive to Noah's mother's house took him down poorly lit back roads where dense trees pressed close to the pavement. Houses were set far apart, many with long gravel driveways disappearing into darkness. Noah's home was a small single-story with peeling white paint and potted flowers on the porch. A security light snapped on as Elijah approached, and the front door opened before he could knock. Margaret Pike was a thin woman in her 50s, with Noah's same watchful eyes and nervous energy. "You're the FBI agent," she said immediately. "From the video." "Noah's not here." "When did you last hear from him?" Elijah kept his voice calm despite his rising concern. "He texted at 8, said he was leaving work." Her hands twisted in her apron. "But there was this truck parked down the road earlier. Dark color, tinted windows, just sitting there with its lights off for almost an hour. When I called the sheriff's office, they said they'd send someone to check. Nobody ever came." Elijah's jaw tightened. "Did you recognize the truck, or see anyone inside?" "No, but—" She glanced over her shoulder as if checking who might be listening. 2 weeks ago, some deputies came by asking strange questions about Noah. about his phone, his computer. Said it was routine follow-up from a minor accident. But Noah never had any accident. The pattern was becoming clearer. They'd been watching Noah even before today's video, perhaps monitoring several potential witnesses. Elijah took detailed notes about the truck and the deputy's visit, then assured Margaret he would find her son. Back in his vehicle, Elijah called his federal task force contacts. The responses were oddly muted, bureaucratic. File a missing persons report through proper channels, one supervisor suggested. We'll review jurisdiction in the morning, another promised. No urgency, no immediate resources, as if they wanted this handled slowly, officially, safely buried in procedure. By midnight, Elijah sat in his motel room surrounded by spread-out maps and documents. He marked every location where Lena had mentioned suspicious stops. He plotted traffic patterns, camera blind spots, and areas with poor cell coverage. He analyzed the anonymous numbers that had texted him, tracing them to burner phones purchased in different counties. The picture emerging wasn't just about his humiliation at the gas station. This was coordinated, practiced. The speed of response, the careful timing, the immediate pressure on witnesses. It spoke of an existing system, not an improvised reaction. They had infrastructure in place before he ever arrived. Rural highways made perfect hunting grounds, isolated stretches of road, strategic camera placement, coordinated officers who knew which stops to make and which ones to ignore. How many others had faced what he faced today, but without a federal badge to protect them? The hours crept toward dawn. Elijah's laptop screen glowed with news coverage of his own detention, but Noah's face was nowhere in the reporting yet. The young mechanic was just another missing person in a county that seemed to create them regularly. On his notebook, Elijah carefully wrote Noah's name at the top of a fresh page. Below it, he began listing every detail, every connection, every inconsistency in the system's response. The sun would rise soon, and with it, his real investigation would begin. This wasn't just about one illegal stop anymore. The entire county had become his case. And somewhere in its dark spaces, a brave young witness needed help. The morning sun cast long shadows across Lena's parking lot as Elijah pulled in. Through the diner's windows, he could see the glow of multiple TV screens mounted on the walls. His own face stared back from each one, caught in that tense moment at the gas pumps. Inside, the usual breakfast crowd sat in unusual silence. Plates of eggs and hash browns cooled untouched as customers watched the news coverage loop. Some turned away when Elijah entered, suddenly fascinated by their coffee cups. Others nodded slightly, a quiet acknowledgement. "They've been playing it since 5 a.m., Lena said, sliding a fresh coffee across the counter. "Every channel, every hour." Sheriff Voss even did a phone interview, talking about regrettable misunderstandings and reviewing procedures. On the nearest screen, Officer Mercer's face twisted with recognition as Elijah's FBI badge appeared. The footage was crystal clear, damning. But Noah's absence made the viral attention feel hollow. "Tell me about the other stops," Elijah said quietly, pulling out his notebook. Lena glanced around the diner, then lowered her voice. 2 months ago, we had a black family from Atlanta. Father was a deacon. Son played college football. Deputies held them for an hour, claiming their rental car matched a drug runner's vehicle. She poured more coffee. Last summer, 3 separate vans of migrant workers, all legitimate crews with papers, all detained until their phones were inspected for evidence. Never got the phones back. "Any activists?" Elijah asked. "Environmental group last spring, heading to protest a pipeline. Deputies said they had reports of eco-terrorists." Lena's mouth tightened. "They were college kids with camping gear. One girl got roughed up when she tried filming." Elijah spent the next hour gathering names and dates. Most incidents happened along specific stretches of highway. Route 23 between mileposts 140, 155, County Road 8 near the state forest, the access road by the old factory, strategic locations, good sight lines, limited escape routes. By 8 o'clock, he was knocking on doors in a small subdivision where one of the detained families lived. The deacon's wife answered, recognized him from the news, and invited him in despite her obvious fear. "They had guns drawn on my 17-year-old, she said, hands shaking as she described that night. Made him lie face down on hot asphalt. When my husband tried to record it, they said he was interfering with police business." She showed Elijah the arrest report. Her son described as combative, her husband as aggressive, the entire stop rewritten to justify excessive force. At the First Baptist Church, the pastor confirmed multiple congregation members had similar experiences. Sheriff Voss shows up at council meetings, talks about community safety, keeping out troublemakers. But we know who he means by troublemakers. A local mechanic spoke in whispers behind his garage. Those deputies watch certain shops, certain neighborhoods. They know which cars to stop, which people look suspicious. Been that way since Voss took over 10 years ago. By 11, Elijah had interviewed 8 victims and gathered dozens of names. The pattern was undeniable. Highway enforcement wasn't random. It was a targeted tool, weaponized against specific groups. The stops clustered in zones that created perfect traps, isolated stretches where help was far away and witnesses were rare. He called his federal supervisory agent from the church parking lot, reporting clear evidence of coordinated civil rights violations. The response was immediate but tepid. "We need to follow proper channels," his supervisor said. "File the preliminary paperwork. Let local internal affairs do their initial review." "I have multiple witnesses describing systematic abuse," Elijah interrupted, "and a missing person who filmed police misconduct. This needs immediate." "Agent Reed, you're emotionally invested after your personal incident. Let's not escalate tensions without cause." The resistance felt wrong. Not just bureaucratic caution, but active deflection. Like someone wanted this buried in paperwork until memories faded and witnesses disappeared. Elijah ended the call and sat in his SUV, reviewing his notes. Names, dates, locations, each stop precisely placed to maximize isolation and fear. The victims changed, but the tactics remained consistent. Bogus, probable cause, immediate escalation, seized phones, manipulated reports. A machine built to grind down resistance through routine humiliation. And someone in his own chain of command wanted him to back off. Movement in his rear-view mirror caught his attention. A patrol car had pulled into the church lot, engine idling. The deputy inside made no move to approach, just sat watching. After 2 long minutes, the cruiser pulled away slowly. Message delivered. They knew where he was, what he was doing, who he was talking to. Just like they'd known he was coming yesterday. Just like they'd known Noah would film them. The question was, who told them? The courthouse square baked under the midday sun as people gathered around the makeshift podium. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes reaching toward the cloudless sky. Local reporters clutched notepads while national correspondents adjusted their microphones, all waiting for Sheriff Nolan Voss to address yesterday's viral confrontation. Elijah stood at the crowd's edge, studying faces. Some residents avoided his gaze. Others offered subtle nods of support. A few glared openly, already choosing sides. 2 deputies flanked the courthouse steps, hands resting casually on their belts. A quiet reminder of who controlled this space. Right on schedule, Sheriff Voss emerged from the building. His silver hair caught the sunlight as he approached the podium with unhurried steps. He wore no uniform today, just pressed slacks and a blue button-down that made him look more like someone's kindly grandfather than a law enforcement officer. The crowd's murmurs died down as he adjusted the microphone. "Good morning, friends and neighbors," Voss began, his voice warm and measured. "I know many of you are concerned about the incident that occurred yesterday at Morales gas station. Let me be clear. This department takes any allegation of misconduct very seriously." Elijah watched the performance with growing unease. Voss wasn't defensive or angry. He was reasonable, concerned, almost sad that anyone would question his deputy's integrity. "What happened yesterday was an unfortunate misunderstanding during a legitimate investigation," Voss continued. "Our officers were responding to reports of an armed suspect in the area. They followed standard procedure for a high-risk stop, only to discover they had detained a federal agent. Once his identity was confirmed, the situation was immediately de-escalated." The sheriff paused, looking directly into the TV cameras. "I've already ordered a full internal review. But I want to remind everyone that 10 seconds of viral video doesn't show the whole story. These officers risk their lives daily protecting this community. They deserve due process, not trial by social media." The local reporters nodded along. They'd known Voss for years, trusted him, relied on him for quotes and access. He was transforming yesterday's ugly reality into something more palatable. Just a misunderstanding between professionals. Nothing to see here. "As for Special Agent Reed," Voss said, his tone suggesting reasonable concern, "we welcome federal law enforcement partnerships. But if he has concerns about our procedures, my door is always open for a professional discussion. There's no need to inflame tensions in our peaceful community." The message was clear. Elijah was the outsider causing trouble, not the deputies who had assaulted him. Voss never mentioned Mercer or Barlow by name, never addressed the missing witness, never acknowledged the pattern of similar stops. He simply reframed everything in careful, reasonable language that made resistance sound unreasonable. As the crowd began dispersing, Elijah noticed a female deputy watching him from near the courthouse door. She was younger than most of Voss's personnel, maybe early 30s, with short brown hair and an expression that suggested internal conflict. When their eyes met, she gave a barely perceptible nod and started walking toward him. "Agent Reed," she said quietly as she passed. "Deputy Rachel Sloan. Keep walking like we're not talking." Elijah matched her pace, maintaining casual distance. She slipped a folded note into his pocket without breaking stride. "Don't trust the case logs," she murmured. "Check timestamps against dispatch records. That's all I can say here." Before he could respond, she veered away toward a patrol car, leaving Elijah to continue walking alone. He waited until he was back in his SUV to read the note. "Too many eyes in daylight. Will text location later." The afternoon stretched long as Elijah dug through public records at the county clerk's office. What he found confirmed Rachel's warning. Complaint numbers jumped inexplicably, suggesting missing reports. Traffic stop logs showed impossible gaps, as if certain hours had been erased. And Lena's gas station appeared in service calls far too frequently for random chance. He cross-referenced addresses, dates, and officer badge numbers. Patterns emerged in the chaos, specific deputies working specific zones at specific times. The same names kept intersecting. Mercer, Barlow, 3 others he didn't know yet. Their stops clustered around isolated locations where witnesses would be scarce and help would be far away. The sun was setting when Rachel's text finally arrived. "Old Marshall Feed Store. 30 Mians. Come alone." Elijah drove through deepening twilight to the abandoned building on the edge of town. Paint peeled from its weathered walls, and broken windows gaped like empty eye sockets. He parked behind the loading dock where his vehicle wouldn't be visible from the road. The engine ticked as it cooled. Crickets chirped in the tall grass. A train whistle sounded in the distance. Elijah watched shadows lengthen across the cracked pavement, wondering if Rachel Sloane was truly reaching out for help, or if she'd been ordered to lure him into an ambush. He checked his weapon, then his phone signal. 1 bar of service. The closest business was a truck stop 2 miles away. If this was a trap, he was isolated, just like Noah had been, just like all those traffic stops had been. The gravel crunched under tires as Rachel's unmarked department car pulled behind the feed store. She parked facing outward, engine off, but keys in the ignition. Every few seconds, her eyes darted to the mirrors, watching for approaching headlights on the empty road. Elijah stepped out of his SUV's shadow as she emerged. Rachel's uniform was crisp, but her hands trembled slightly as she gripped a thick manila folder. "I shouldn't be here," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "If anyone sees us—" "No one followed you," Elijah assured her. "I've been watching the approaches." Rachel glanced over her shoulder again. Moths fluttered around the single security light mounted high on the feed store's wall. The bulb cast harsh shadows across her face, deepening the worry lines around her eyes. "I've been with the department 3 years," she began. "At first, I told myself certain stops were just thorough policing. But then I started noticing patterns." She opened the folder, hands steadier now that she was finally speaking. "Mercer and Barlow work specific zones. They coordinate with 3 other deputies, Phillips, Torres, and Whitman. They use unmarked vehicles sometimes, waiting at particular mile markers." "How do they choose targets?" Elijah asked. "They have lists." Rachel's voice hardened with disgust. "Nothing official, nothing in the system. Just names, vehicle descriptions, phone numbers. Some people they stop for information, activists, journalists, anyone asking questions about local politics. Others they search for cash, especially immigrant workers who might not trust banks. And some," she swallowed, "some they just want to scare. To remind them who owns these roads." A freight train whistled in the distance. Rachel flinched at the sound. "And Voss?" Elijah pressed. "How involved is he?" "He reviews everything sensitive. Personally." Rachel pulled out a sheet of paper. "These are dates when he came to the station after hours. Match them against your traffic stop records. They line up with complaints that later vanished." Elijah studied the dates, seeing the pattern emerge. Where do they keep the real evidence? The unedited files? Restricted archive room in the basement. Key card access, officially for cold cases and sensitive materials. Rachel's words came faster now, like she needed to get them out before courage failed. "But they store other things there. Phones they've seized, original dash cam footage, internal memos that never made it to official channels. I've seen them taking boxes down there after certain stops. And my stop yesterday. How did they know I was coming?" Rachel shook her head. "I don't have proof. But around noon, dispatch got word to watch for a federal agent's vehicle. They had your plate number, your route. Someone higher up passed that intel to the county." "Someone on my own task force," Elijah said quietly. "Has to be. The information was too specific." Rachel hugged the folder against her chest. "I've watched them do this for months. Kept my head down, told myself speaking up would end my career. Or worse. But when Noah disappeared," her voice cracked, "he was just trying to help. Just holding up his phone. And now he's gone." A pickup truck rumbled past on the main road. They both froze until its taillights vanished around the curve. "I need your help," Elijah said. "Tonight. Those archive files won't stay there long, not with this much attention on the department." "Tonight?" Rachel stepped back. "That's too risky. The station's never empty. But it's quieter on night shift. Fewer eyes." Elijah kept his voice calm, reasonable. Every hour we wait is another hour for them to clean house. And Noah's still out there somewhere. Rachel paced a tight circle, boots scuffing the gravel. The security light buzzed overhead, its harsh glare emphasizing her internal struggle. "If they catch us," she started. "They'll do worse if we wait," Elijah finished. "You've seen how they operate. Now that Noah's missing, they'll start eliminating loose ends, including deputies who might talk." That landed. Rachel stopped pacing and stared at the dark fields beyond the feed store. "Shift change is at 10, she said finally. "Night crew takes about 20 minutes to settle in. Most of them stay up front near dispatch. The archive room—" She took a deep breath. "I can get us in. My key card still works for basic access. And if we find proof, then I'll testify. About everything." Rachel's voice steadied with the decision. "But we have to find something concrete, something they can't bury or explain away." They spent the next hour planning entry points and timing. Rachel sketched the station's layout on the back of a report, marking cameras and patrol patterns. Elijah memorized escape routes and blind spots. At 9:45, they pulled out separately, taking different roads toward the sheriff's station. Elijah parked in the shadows of a closed insurance office across the street. Rachel's unmarked car blended with other deputy vehicles in the side lot. Through his windshield, Elijah watched uniformed figures moving under the station's fluorescent lights. Day shift deputies emerged in casual clothes, heading for their cars. Night shift arrived with coffee cups and tired expressions. The normal rhythm of a small-town police station cycling through its routines. Except nothing about this station was normal. And somewhere in its basement, filed away in darkness, lay the proof that could tear the whole corrupt system down. The dashboard clock clicked to 9:55. 5 minutes until shift change began. Elijah checked his weapon, then his phone. One last message to a trusted contact with his location and intent. Across the street, Rachel sat motionless in her car, watching the same clock count down. The metal door clicked softly as Rachel's key card granted access. She held it open just wide enough for Elijah to slip through behind her. The station's side entrance opened into a maintenance corridor lit only by exit signs that cast everything in dim red shadows. "Stay close to the wall," Rachel whispered. "Camera blind spot runs all the way down." They moved in silence, footsteps muffled on the industrial carpet. The night shift's voices echoed from the front desk area, but this section remained empty. Rachel led them past supply closets and break rooms, pausing at each corner to check for movement. The stairwell to the basement levels required another card swipe. Rachel's hand shook slightly as she pressed it to the reader. The lock disengaged with a heavy thunk that seemed too loud in the quiet hallway. "Record storage is through 2 more secure doors," she said, descending the stairs. "But my clearance only works on the first one. We'll have to—" She stopped short. The second door already stood partially open, light spilling from inside. "Someone's been here tonight," Elijah said quietly. Rachel nodded. "They're probably destroying evidence right now." They approached cautiously, but the archive room appeared empty. Metal shelving units created narrow aisles filled with boxes and equipment. A desk lamp cast harsh shadows across scattered files and electronics. "Here," Rachel pointed to a section marked Special Holdings. "This is where they keep the sensitive materials." Elijah began examining boxes while Rachel photographed their contents. The evidence of systematic abuse was overwhelming. Phones with cracked screens and missing batteries lay tangled in Ziploc bags, many without proper evidence tags. Handwritten lists showed names, addresses, and vehicle descriptions organized by highway zone and county district. "Look at these drives." Elijah held up several unmarked USB sticks. "Just dates, no case numbers or incident reports." "Those would be the real dash cam footage," Rachel said. before they edit it for official records. Large county maps hung on a corkboard, covered in colored pins and handwritten notes. Certain highway stretches were highlighted, with times and locations marked in careful detail. It wasn't random harassment. It was a coordinated campaign of intimidation and control. Elijah pulled out his own flash drive and began copying files from a computer terminal. Rachel documented the maps with her phone, hands steady now despite the risk. "We need to hurry," she said. "Night shift does rounds every 30 minutes. The metallic click of the door made them both freeze. Officer Mercer stood in the doorway, her face tight with cold fury. "I knew you'd try something stupid, Rachel." Before either could move, Officer Barlow appeared behind her, filling the exit with his bulk. "Got your message about suspicious activity in the archives. Guess you were right." "Dana," Rachel's voice cracked slightly, "this isn't what you think." "It's exactly what I think." Mercer stepped into the room. "You're helping an outsider attack your own department. Your own people." "These aren't my people," Rachel shot back. "Not after what I've seen." Barlow moved first, swinging his baton at Elijah's head. Elijah ducked, and the weapon crashed into a metal shelf, sending files cascading to the floor. Rachel lunged for the door, but Mercer caught her arm, twisting it brutally behind her back. The room erupted into chaos. Shelving units rocked as bodies slammed against them. Papers and electronics scattered across the floor. Barlow swung again, but Elijah deflected the strike and rammed his shoulder into the larger man's chest, driving him back into a filing cabinet. Rachel struggled with Mercer, but the female officer had leverage and training. She slammed Rachel face first into the desk. The impact knocked the wind from Rachel's lungs and split her lip. Elijah saw an opening and grabbed Barlow's baton arm, twisting until the weapon clattered free. He kicked it across the floor and drove his elbow up into Barlow's jaw. The officer staggered, giving Elijah precious seconds to snatch his flash drive from the computer. "Rachel!" he shouted. "Move!" She managed to drive her heel into Mercer's knee, breaking free with a gasp of pain. Elijah grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the rear corridor just as Barlow recovered his balance. An alarm began blaring through the building. Someone had triggered a security alert. Red emergency lights strobed through the hallways as they ran. Rachel stumbled, clutching her ribs, but Elijah kept her moving. "Split up," she gasped as they reached the parking lot. "Less suspicious, if we're not together." Elijah helped her to her car. "Can you drive?" She nodded, pressing a hand to her bloody lip. "I know somewhere safe. Lena has a friend, retired nurse. She helps people who can't go to hospitals. Text me the address once you're clear. I'll meet you there." They peeled out of the lot in opposite directions just as more deputy vehicles came screaming around the corner, lights flashing. Elijah took a maze of back roads, watching his mirror for pursuit. His heart still raced from the fight, but his mind remained focused on the flash drive burning a hole in his pocket. 20 minutes of evasive driving brought him to a small house on the outskirts of town. Rachel's car was already parked in the shadows of an old oak tree. Inside, an elderly woman with steel-gray hair was taping Rachel's ribs, while Lena hovered nearby with supplies. "Nothing's broken," the nurse reported. "But you'll be sore for days." Elijah waited until Rachel was patched up before pulling out his laptop. His hands were steady as he inserted the flash drive, hoping they'd found enough to justify the night's violence and risk. The screen filled with folders as the drive loaded. Rachel leaned forward despite her injuries, watching as Elijah began opening files that might finally expose the truth. The rain drummed steadily against the diner's windows as dawn crept over the horizon. Elijah sat at Lena's office desk, his laptop casting a blue glow across tired faces. Rachel winced as she shifted in her chair, her ribs still tender from the evidence room fight. "Look at this," Elijah said, opening another file from the flash drive. Body cam footage from 3 months ago. Watch how Mercer approaches this driver. The grainy video showed Mercer using the same practiced moves she'd used on Elijah. The careful positioning to block view from passing cars, the escalating tone, the way she signaled her partner. "They've turned it into a routine," Rachel said softly. "Like a script they all follow." Lena locked the office door and pulled down the blinds before joining them. "Been watching them do this for years. Never had proof, though, just what I could see from my window." Elijah opened another folder labeled only with a date. Inside were chat logs between officers and local phone numbers, conversations about specific vehicles to watch for, times to expect certain drivers, suggestions for which highways to patrol. "These aren't random stops," he said. "They're coordinating with civilians, targeting specific people." Rachel leaned forward despite her injuries. That's why some of those maps in the evidence room had pins in them. They were marking successful stops, planning the next ones. "Hold on." Lena went to her filing cabinet and pulled out an external hard drive. "I've got something you need to see." She connected it to Elijah's laptop and opened a folder of security footage from the gas station's front cameras. The earliest clips were dated 3 years back. "My husband installed these before he passed," she explained. "He never trusted the department. Said we needed our own eyes." The videos painted a damning picture. Car after car pulled over for invisible violations. Drivers searched without cause. Cash and phones taken but never logged. Deputies high-fiving out of camera range, thinking no one was watching. "This isn't just harassment," Elijah said. "It's organized theft and intimidation. They've built a whole system around it." Rachel scrolled through more chat logs. "Look how they talk about it. Teaching lessons. Reminding people who's in charge. They're proud of what they're doing." "And now we can prove it," Elijah said. "Between these logs, the evidence room files, and Lena's footage, we have enough to trigger a federal investigation. No one can claim these are isolated incidents anymore." The rain intensified outside, but inside the office, hope began to grow. For the first time since the gas station confrontation, they had more than just suspicion and anger. They had documentation. Names, patterns, proof. Around 10 in the morning, a soft knock at the back door made them all freeze. Lena checked the rear security camera and gasped. "It's Noah," she whispered. "He's alive." Elijah moved quickly to the door, gun ready, checking for any signs of a trap. But it was just Noah Pike, soaked from the rain, his face bruised and his clothes muddy. They brought him inside quickly. His hands shook as Lena wrapped him in a dry blanket and made him hot coffee. "They grabbed me right after my shift," Noah said, his voice hoarse. 3 men in masks. Threw me in a truck and took me to some shed out past the county line." Elijah recorded everything on his phone as Noah described the night. The threats, the demands for every copy of the arrest video, the warnings about what would happen to his mother if he didn't cooperate. "They kept saying I needed to understand how things work around here," Noah continued, "that some things aren't meant to be seen by outsiders." "How did you get away?" Rachel asked gently. "They were moving me this morning. Guess they didn't want to keep me in one place too long. One of them got sloppy with the restraints. I waited until they stopped for gas and just ran. Kept running through the woods until I recognized where I was." Elijah squeezed Noah's shoulder. "You did the right thing coming here. We're going to get you somewhere safe now." "My mom will protect her too," Elijah promised. "I'm calling in federal witness protection. No one will touch either of you." As Noah gave his official statement, Elijah felt the pieces finally falling into place. They had the flash drive evidence, Lena's videos, Rachel's testimony about department operations, and now a witness who could describe firsthand how far the corruption reached. By late afternoon, Elijah had made the calls and arranged transport. A safe house was waiting 2 states away. As dusk approached, He did one final sweep of the area before walking Noah to the unmarked vehicle that would take him to protection. The rain had stopped, but heavy clouds still hung low over the trees. Noah clutched a small bag of belongings, scanning the shadows nervously as they crossed the parking lot. A truck engine revved somewhere in the darkness beyond the tree line. Noah flinched, nearly dropping his bag. The county roads twisted through dense woods, dark except for Elijah's headlights cutting through the evening haze. Noah sat rigid in the passenger seat, flinching at every shadow between the trees. 20 minutes to the handoff, Elijah said, trying to sound reassuring. Federal marshals are waiting. You'll be out of state before sunrise. Noah nodded, but kept watching the mirrors. They're out there somewhere. I can feel it. Elijah checked his own mirrors for the 100th time. No headlights behind them. The road ahead remained empty. Still, something felt wrong. The escape seemed too easy after everything that had happened. A deer darted across the road. Elijah swerved slightly, and Noah grabbed the dashboard. "Sorry," Elijah said. "We're okay." That's when the engine started sputtering. "No, no, no." Elijah watched the temperature gauge spike into the red. Steam began curling from under the hood. He had no choice but to pull onto the narrow shoulder. "Stay in the car," he ordered Noah, drawing his weapon before stepping out. The hood was too hot to touch. Coolant pooled beneath the engine. A truck's high beams suddenly blazed to life from a hidden access road 50 yards back, momentarily blinding them. "Get back in!" Elijah shouted, but Noah was already out of the passenger side, panicked and disoriented by the lights. The truck's engine roared. Tires squealed on asphalt. Noah stumbled toward the tree line as Elijah ran to reach him. He was 3 steps too late. The truck swerved onto the shoulder at full speed. Noah had one heartbeat to turn toward the sound before the impact launched him into the darkness. The truck never slowed, disappearing around the next curve with its lights off. "Officer down! Officer down!" Elijah screamed into his radio, sprinting to where Noah lay crumpled in the grass. "Route 23, mile marker 142. Need immediate medical." Noah's pulse was weak, his breathing shallow. Blood spread across his shirt. "Stay with me," Elijah pleaded, applying pressure to the worst wounds. "Help is coming. Just stay with me." Noah's eyes flickered. His lips moved, trying to form words, but only blood came out. His hand clutched weakly at Elijah's sleeve. Then the hand went limp. "No," Elijah whispered. "No, no, no." He started chest compressions, counting desperately between breaths. But Noah was already gone. In the distance, sirens wailed too late. Elijah was still kneeling beside the body when the first responders arrived. He watched numbly as they confirmed what he already knew. Noah Pike, age 26, pronounced dead at the scene. His phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "They just suspended me. Internal Affairs claims I'm mentally unstable, making up stories about department corruption. They're calling the evidence room incident a paranoid break. I'm done." Elijah's hands shook with rage as he typed back. "Stay safe. Don't trust anyone." At the diner, Lena helped him connect the flash drive to check what evidence they still had. The screen filled with error messages. File after file came up corrupted, reduced to random code. It was a trap, Elijah realized. The drive had malware. They wanted us to take it, to think we had proof. Now it's all gone. "All of it?" Lena asked. "Everything we took from the evidence room. They let us think we were winning so they could destroy it all at once." A crash of breaking glass cut through their despair. Orange light flared as something ignited in the storage room. Smoke poured through the doorway. "Back door!" Elijah shouted, grabbing Lena's arm. They ran for the exit as flames climbed the walls. The heat pressed against their backs. The door handle burned Elijah's palm, but he yanked it open. They stumbled into the parking lot, gasping for clean air as fire engulfed the room they'd just left. Firefighters arrived quickly, but the damage was done. The storage room and office were gutted. Any remaining evidence had been reduced to ash. Elijah's phone rang. It was his technical team, confirming what he'd dreaded. Access logs showed someone inside his own task force had pulled his travel route details the day before the gas station incident. The leak came from his own people, Agent Reed. The voice belonged to Assistant Director Marshall, his most trusted superior. "I'm ordering you to stand down. This has gone too far." "Sir, they just killed a witness. They're burning evidence. We can't." "That's an order, Agent. Supervisory Agent Hale will handle the transition. You're off the case, effective immediately." The call ended. Elijah stared at his phone, then at the smoking ruins of Lena's diner. Noah was dead. Rachel was discredited. Their evidence was destroyed. And now even his own agency was shutting him down. Through the crowd of emergency vehicles, he spotted Peter Hale watching from the shadows. His supervisor's face showed no emotion, just cold calculation as he observed the destruction he'd helped orchestrate. The realization hit Elijah like physical pain. The enemy wasn't just the county. The corruption reached all the way up his own chain of command. Everyone he'd trusted was compromised. The night air reeked of smoke and betrayal. The diner's charred walls loomed black against the midnight sky. Emergency lights painted everything in alternating red and blue as firefighters wrapped up their work. Elijah sat on a concrete parking block, shoulders heavy with exhaustion, watching smoke drift across the empty lot. A familiar sedan pulled in smoothly, its headlights sweeping across the scene. Peter Hale stepped out, his suit pristine despite the late hour. He approached with the careful concern of a doctor delivering bad news. "I wanted to handle this in person," Hale said, stopping a few feet away. "You've been through enough tonight." Elijah didn't stand. "That's thoughtful of you, sir." "This situation has spiraled," Hale continued. "Your public involvement is compromising sensitive operations. We need to contain the damage before more people get hurt." "Like Noah Pike got hurt?" "A tragedy. But rushing in emotionally will only make things worse." Hale's tone was reasonable, measured. "Let the proper channels handle this." "Which channels would those be?" Elijah studied his supervisor carefully. "The ones that leaked my route to the sheriff's department?" "We don't know that for certain." Hale frowned. "Though I understand Sheriff Voss has expressed concerns about federal overreach affecting his highway interdiction programs." Elijah's spine stiffened. He had never mentioned Voss's highway operations in any official reports. That detail had only come from Rachel's private confession. "Interesting that you know about those programs, sir. I make it my business to stay informed about local law enforcement priorities." Hale's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Coordination between agencies is critical." "Is that what you call it? Coordination?" "Choose your next words carefully, Agent Reed." The warmth drained from Hale's voice. "Your career has already taken enough damage tonight. Like the damage to Lena's security footage? Or to that flash drive from the evidence room? I wouldn't know anything about that." But Hale's jaw tightened slightly. "Though I hear the sheriff's IT team discovered some concerning network breaches recently." Another detail Elijah had never reported. The pieces clicked into place with nauseating clarity. Hale hadn't just leaked information. He'd been actively helping Voss's department track and counter every move. "How long have you been feeding them intel?" Elijah asked quietly. "I've maintained appropriate professional contact with local authorities." Hale straightened his jacket. "Unlike some agents who seem determined to spark unnecessary conflicts." Was Noah Pike's death unnecessary conflict? That was a tragic traffic accident, according to the preliminary report. Hale's tone carried a warning. I suggest you accept the official findings and take some time off to process your grief. Elijah wanted to grab him by the throat and demand answers, but without proof, confronting Hale directly would only get him suspended faster. He forced his voice to stay steady. Is there anything else you need, sir? Just your badge and credentials. Temporary suspension. Pending review. Hale held out his hand. Standard procedure after a traumatic incident. Elijah slowly placed his badge and ID in Hale's palm, feeling naked without them. Get some rest, Hale said. Let the system work as intended. He turned and walked away, shoes clicking precisely on the asphalt. The moment Hale's car disappeared, Elijah slumped forward and buried his face in his hands. Noah's death, Rachel's destruction, the evidence lost, his own helplessness, it all crashed over him at once. His shoulders shook with rage and grief. Don't you dare give up! Lena's voice cut through his despair. She stood over him, arms crossed, face hard in the emergency lights. They've won, Elijah whispered. They destroyed everything we had. That's what they want you to think. Lena sat beside him. Men like Voss and Hale, they survive because good people get too tired to keep fighting. They count on wearing you down. Noah died because I involved him, because I thought I could protect him. Noah died because evil men murdered him, Lena snapped. Don't you dare take their guilt onto yourself. The only way to honor him is to finish what he started. Elijah lifted his head. How? They erased all the evidence. The security footage, the flash drive, everything that could have proved what they're doing. Lena was quiet for a moment, watching the last firefighters pack up their gear. Maybe not everything, she said slowly. What do you mean? My husband, Carlos, he never trusted the deputies. Every time they came asking about our camera setup, he got more paranoid. She turned to face Elijah. About 8 years ago, he installed a backup system, completely separate from the main security feeds. It saved everything to an off-site server in case someone tampered with the visible cameras. Elijah straightened. Where? Old storage shed on our back property. I haven't checked it in years, but if it's still running... She stood up. Come on. We need to look before dawn. Elijah followed her to her truck, hope flickering faintly in his chest. As they pulled out of the lot, he glanced back at the diner's scorched walls. Maybe the truth hadn't burned after all. The storage shed's corrugated metal walls creaked in the pre-dawn breeze. Elijah brushed cobwebs from an ancient computer tower while Lena held up her phone for light. The air smelled of dust and old motor oil. Carlos built this setup himself, Lena said, gesturing to a complex array of cables running through PVC pipes. He ran lines underground from every camera, separate from the main system. Said nobody could tamper with what they couldn't see. Elijah traced the cables to a row of external hard drives mounted on a makeshift shelf. Smart man. Paranoid man, Lena corrected, but her voice held pride. He always said being paranoid just means paying attention. The computer's power button glowed green when Elijah pressed it. The fan whirred to life, surprisingly quiet for its age. An old monitor flickered, showing a basic file directory. Please still work, Lena whispered. Elijah clicked through folders organized by date. The most recent files were from yesterday. The system was still running, still recording, completely unknown to the department that thought they'd destroyed all evidence. Here, he said, opening the folder from his arrest. Multiple video files appeared, each showing different angles of the gas station lot. He clicked the first one. The footage was clearer than he expected. Unlike the main security cameras mounted obviously on the building, these hidden ones captured wider views from unexpected angles. One showed the entire confrontation reflected in the station's windows. Another caught Mercer signaling Barlow before they approached, proving premeditation. My God, Lena breathed. Look how many files there are. Elijah began searching backward through dates. The archive went deep, documenting years of stops and searches. He found footage of deputies dragging people from vehicles while claiming probable cause. Mercer appeared frequently, her calm professionalism masking calculated cruelty. Barlow was less subtle, rough with detainees, while other officers conveniently looked away. "There," Lena pointed. A clip showed Mercer planting something in a car's trunk during a search, while Barlow blocked the owner's view. In another, they laughed and joked after reducing an elderly black man to tears. "They knew where the visible cameras were," Elijah said, "but these caught everything they thought was hidden." He found multiple clips showing unmarked pickup trucks arriving after certain stops, usually when phones or laptops were seized. The same vehicles appeared too often for coincidence. Then a familiar face appeared in frame. Sheriff Voss himself, speaking quietly with deputies after a particularly aggressive detention. "Wait," Lena said suddenly. "Go back to yesterday morning." Elijah reversed through files until she told him to stop. The footage showed a dark pickup idling near the gas pumps hours before Noah disappeared. The same truck witnesses had reported near Noah's house. "They were waiting for him," Elijah said quietly. "They knew he had the video of my arrest." Another clip showed deputies methodically cutting power to the main security system, thinking they'd erased crucial evidence. The hidden cameras caught their satisfied expressions as they left, unaware they'd missed the backup. "We need to copy everything," Elijah said, plugging in external drives he'd brought. Multiple backups, different locations. While files transferred, he contacted 3 former colleagues he still trusted absolutely, people outside his compromised task force. They helped him establish secure cloud relays to protect the footage from any local interference. Rachel arrived as dawn broke, moving carefully with her injuries from the evidence room fight. She watched several clips in silence, her face hardening. "Submitting this through channels won't work," she said finally. "Hale would bury it before it reached anyone who could act. And Voss has too many friends in state offices." "Agreed," Elijah said. "This has to be public. All at once, where they can't control the narrative." "But how?" Lena asked. "They'll shut down any local media outlet that tries to run it." Rachel checked her phone. "Voss just announced a town hall meeting for tonight. He's calling it a community dialogue to address concerns about your arrest and Noah's death." "More like damage control," Lena muttered. "No," Elijah said slowly. "It's perfect. They're creating their own stage." He outlined his idea quickly. Rachel's eyes widened. "That's incredibly risky," she said. "If it goes wrong, it has to be public," Elijah insisted. "Live in front of witnesses, with no way to spin it. Noah died trying to show people the truth. We owe him this." Lena nodded firmly. "I'm in. Whatever you need." They spent the next hours preparing multiple copies of key footage, organizing clips for maximum impact, and coordinating with Elijah's trusted contacts to ensure the evidence couldn't be erased once exposed. Rachel provided details about the town hall venue's layout and security procedures. By late morning, Voss's office confirmed the meeting would be packed. Local media, church leaders, activists, and concerned citizens all planning to attend. The sheriff clearly intended to reassert control over the narrative. Elijah stared at the footage still playing silently on the old monitor. Mercer and Barlow's faces flickered past, then Voss's practiced smile, then the truck that had stalked Noah. Years of abuse and intimidation, all captured by a paranoid man's hidden cameras. "Time to show everyone who they really are," he said quietly. The county hall's oak-paneled walls trapped the late afternoon heat. Every folding chair creaked with nervous energy as residents, reporters, and local leaders packed the space shoulder to shoulder. TV cameras lined the back wall, their red recording lights steady. 2 live-stream feeds ran simultaneously, broadcasting everything to viewers far beyond county lines. Sheriff Voss stood at the podium in his freshly pressed uniform, brass badges gleaming under fluorescent lights. He radiated grandfatherly authority, his silver hair and practiced smile designed to comfort and reassure. Officer Mercer sat rigid in the front row, her face a mask of professional calm. Beside her, Officer Barlow scanned the crowd with barely concealed disdain. Near the exit, Supervisory Agent Peter Hale leaned against the wall, arms crossed. His presence was meant to suggest federal oversight, but his slight smirk betrayed satisfaction at how thoroughly they'd contained the situation. "Friends and neighbors," Voss began, his voice warm and measured, "we gather tonight as a community to address concerns about recent events. While outside influences seek to divide us—" A murmur rippled through the crowd as Elijah Reed entered through the side door, followed by Lena Morales and Deputy Rachel Sloan. Elijah carried a laptop bag and what looked like networking equipment. Rachel moved carefully, her injuries from the evidence room fight still visible. Lena's gaze never left Voss. "We must remember that proper procedures exist to handle any complaints," Voss continued smoothly. "My department remains committed to protecting all citizens equally, regardless of background." Several people nodded. Others shifted uncomfortably, remembering their own roadside encounters. A local pastor raised his hand to ask about Noah Pike's death investigation. Voss gestured welcomingly. "Yes, Reverend. We'll take questions shortly. First, let me address the unfortunate incident involving Agent Reed." "Let's address everything," Elijah said, his voice cutting through the manufactured calm. He moved purposefully toward the AV station where the hall's presentation system was set up. Voss's smile tightened. "Sir, we have a format for public comment." "I'm done with your formats." Elijah connected his equipment to the hall's video feed. "The community deserves to see what your procedures really look like." Barlow half rose from his chair. Mercer touched his arm, warning him not to create a scene. But their practiced control fractured as the first clip appeared on the massive screens. Elijah's arrest from 3 different angles, including views they never knew existed. The footage showed their deliberate approach, their coordinated takedown, their knowledge of his identity before checking credentials. "Where did you—" Mercer started. Elijah advanced to the next clips. Years of stops played in rapid succession. Minorities dragged from vehicles, evidence being planted, phones disappearing into unmarked cars. The hidden cameras had caught everything: casual cruelty, practiced intimidation, calculated abuse of power. Gasps echoed through the hall. A woman began crying as she recognized herself being forced to kneel in the rain while deputies searched her car without cause. An elderly man gripped his cane as footage showed Barlow striking him with a flashlight, then laughing about it later with Mercer. "Cut the power," Voss ordered sharply. "This is unauthorized." "Too late," Elijah said. "The stream is mirrored to secure servers. Everyone sees everything now." Rachel stood, despite her injuries. "I can confirm every incident. I can testify about altered reports, hidden evidence, and direct orders from Sheriff Voss to destroy records." More footage played. The unmarked truck stalking Noah Pike, deputies tampering with security cameras, Voss himself appearing at targeted stops, speaking quietly with officers before departing. The hall erupted in shouts and accusations. Decades of enforced silence shattered as victims found their voices. Reporters pressed forward, cameras rolling. The live stream comment feed exploded. "This is a criminal disruption," Voss declared, but his authority crumbled as people recognized his face in clip after clip. Barlow suddenly drew his weapon. "Everyone back away from the equipment!" Chaos erupted. Chairs toppled as people scrambled for cover. Elijah launched himself at Barlow, tackling him before he could aim toward civilians. They crashed into the front row as Rachel shouted, "Sheriff Voss ordered us to delete evidence. He coordinated with Agent Hale to target specific travelers." Hale tried to slip out the back door. Elijah pinned Barlow with one arm while pointing with the other. Peter Hale fed information to this department for months. He compromised federal operations to protect their harassment campaign. The crowd turned as one, blocking Hale's escape. He backed against the wall, his carefully maintained facade cracking. Outside, sirens approached. But these weren't local units. Federal tactical teams from an outside office surrounded the building, summoned by Elijah's trusted contacts. The livestream captured everything as the truth stripped away years of practiced deception. Voss gripped the podium, his knuckles white. On the screens above him, his own face continued to appear in damning footage, preserved by cameras he never knew existed. The audience watched in stunned silence as their community's dark history played out in vivid, undeniable detail. Through it all, Lena stood quietly near the back, arms crossed, watching justice finally arrive at the speed of light and live-stream bandwidth. Her late husband's paranoid precautions had captured every moment they needed. The truth had been waiting all along, backed up bit by bit, just waiting for someone brave enough to press play. Red and blue lights painted the courthouse walls as federal agents led Sheriff Voss out in handcuffs. His polished badge, the symbol he'd hidden behind for years, was gone. Camera flashes captured his downfall, while reporters broadcasted live from the scene. Behind him, Mercer and Barlow followed in restraints, their uniforms stripped of rank insignia. "Sheriff Nolan Voss, you're under arrest for conspiracy against rights, deprivation of rights under color of law, and witness tampering resulting in death," the lead agent announced, loud enough for every microphone to catch. Peter Hale emerged last, suit jacket wrinkled, professional mask shattered. Two agents gripped his arms as he stumbled down the steps. The sight of a corrupt federal supervisor in custody sent a powerful message. No badge, regardless of jurisdiction, would shield abuse anymore. Across town, tactical teams breached the sheriff's department. They seized computers, weapons, patrol vehicles, and filing cabinets. Deputies who weren't implicated stood aside, watching years of entrenched power crumble. In the evidence room where Elijah and Rachel had fought days earlier, agents discovered more drives, more altered reports, more proof of systematic targeting. "We'll need statements from everyone," an agent told Elijah as they watched the raids unfold. "But this time, people will be heard." Through the night, victims came forward. The church basement became an impromptu processing center where federal investigators recorded testimony. The elderly deacon described his grandson's roadside humiliation. The school counselor detailed vanished migrant workers. The black veteran showed his flashlight scar. But now their words carried weight, backed by video that couldn't be dismissed or buried. "I thought nobody would ever believe us," a woman said softly, after describing how Mercer had threatened her children during a stop. "I thought we'd just have to live with being afraid." Rachel sat with investigators for hours, protected now rather than persecuted. She outlined the department's structure, identified key players, and confirmed what the hidden cameras had caught. Her insider knowledge helped map the extent of corruption. "Deputy Sloan's testimony will be central to multiple cases," the lead prosecutor told Elijah. "We're arranging witness protection and immunity." Dawn broke over a transformed county. News helicopters circled, capturing federal vehicles outside the station. National outlets ran breaking updates. Civil rights organizations pledged support for coming lawsuits. State officials announced emergency oversight measures. In the weeks that followed, justice gained momentum. Class action suits advanced on behalf of hundreds of victims. Reform committees formed with community input. The department's leadership was dismantled and rebuilt under outside supervision. Lena's diner rose from the ashes stronger than before. Customers and neighbors helped repair fire damage, replace equipment, and restore the gathering place that had witnessed so much. The corner booth where Noah Pike often sat received a small brass plaque, "In memory of the young man who chose truth over silence." He'd be proud to see this, Lena told Elijah as they watched volunteers paint fresh walls. Sometimes, one person's courage changes everything. The Justice Department contacted Elijah about heading a new civil rights enforcement initiative. The role would let him address systemic abuse across multiple jurisdictions, using lessons from the county case to drive broader reforms. "We need people who understand both sides of the badge," his supervisor explained, "and who won't back down when power pushes back." 6 weeks after the town hall exposure, Elijah returned to the gas station. This time he came not as a target, but as an honored guest. The forecourt, where he'd been slammed against his SUV, now held folding chairs for a community gathering. Families who'd once hurried past now stood proudly in the open. Local clergy offered prayers for healing. Reporters waited respectfully to document the moment. Lena had mounted a permanent plaque near the pumps. "On this spot, truth confronted power. In memory of Noah Pike and all those who refused to be silenced." "I wish he could see this," Rachel said quietly, standing beside Elijah. Her injuries had healed, but the determination in her eyes remained strong. Children played without fear where patrol cars had once prowled. Elderly couples who'd avoided the station for years now sat in lawn chairs, sharing stories of survival and resilience. The fear that had gripped the highway for so long was finally breaking. Neighbors approached Elijah throughout the afternoon, no longer afraid to be seen speaking with him. They brought food, gratitude, and most importantly, more testimony for the ongoing cases. Every statement strengthened the foundation for lasting change. "My grandson can drive through here now without my heart stopping," the deacon told Elijah. "That's what justice feels like." Elijah stood where Mercer and Barlow had first approached him, but the memory held no more power. The heat still shimmered off the concrete, but the air felt lighter. Local radio still played from speakers near the pumps, but the music sounded more like celebration than background noise for intimidation. He gazed down the highway where those cruisers had once raced in, their lights flashing with manufactured authority. Now the road stretched clean and open in both directions. No more unmarked trucks lurking in shadows. No more coded radio calls coordinating targeted stops. No more silence protecting corruption. The gas station had transformed from a stage for humiliation into a monument to courage. Every person gathered there represented a voice that power had tried to crush. Every smile, every tear, every shared embrace proved that truth could outlast fear. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please like the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.